Shalom. I would like to give all reverence, due benevolence, worship, honor, praise, and glory unto the Most High God, whose name is Yahweh, and His only begotten Son, whose name is Yahushai. This is an exhortation to you, Jake, speaking to those of you whose fathers consider themselves to be so-called Black, Hispanic, or Native American. As I lead off with in all of my exhortations, you are the true Israelites according to the Bible, and it is time for us as a people to come back to the understanding of who we are, what our history is, who our God is, and how we're supposed to serve Him. Now, this exhortation specifically is going to be bringing out some precepts to inform you on your identity according to the scriptures and how you can prove it. I've put up maybe close to a handful of exhortations and teachings, if you will, that in which I liken the concealment of our identity by the other nations unto the Game of Thrones character Jon Snow. Because just to give a brief synopsis, if you have not watched the show, the original Game of Thrones, not House of Dragons, Jon Snow was supposed to be the rightful king of Westeros. He was the son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark, and Rhaegar was I believe he was the son of the Mad King, so he was next in line to be king, and after him would be Jon. But both of his parents died, and he was sent to live in Winterfell with Ned Stark and his family. And though he wasn't treated like the bottom of the barrel, there was always distinction as to Ned's children and him. And eventually he had to go into the Wall, where he took up the Black and had to defend the fictional country of Westeros from the White Walkers and the wildlings who lived beyond the Wall. It always struck me once I started reading the scriptures and having my eyes opened unto the word, understanding what it's truly talking about, not from a Christian or from a worldly perspective. It always struck me that, I don't know, I can't prove undoubtedly that George R.R. Martin used that phrase, taking up the Black, to be some type of subtle connection to the way in which our people are called Black, for example, as our race, which doesn't exist. But I always just found it very striking, because taking up the Black was something that no one wanted to do in that country. It was for the vagabonds, the thieves, the criminals, those who were supposed to be imprisoned but were let out. They went onto the Wall and they had to do the dirty work. Fight for us, make sure that our country is safe. You have to go up there in the freezing cold and just stay out of sight, out of mind. Whatever you do up there, as long as you don't let those White Walkers past our wall and our defense systems. So that's a synopsis on Jon Snow, and it just really harkens unto our people, because we were brought here to the fourth part of the world during the transatlantic slave trade. And what have we done here over the last 500 years? We've been in servitude, in subjection. Our men have built the railroad systems all throughout the South and Midwest. We fuel the automotive industry, manufacturing in the turn of the 20th century, leading up until maybe the 1970s, before the automotive industries were phased out of cities like Detroit, for example. Our people, it goes without saying what our people did in the fields during chattel slavery. In the Caribbean, for Southern Kingdom and Northern Kingdom, like Manasseh, for example, Ephraim, Simeon, who are the Cubans, Puerto Ricans, and Dominicans, respectfully. I believe I got that right. Manasseh, Ephraim, and Simeon dealt with their share of crops that is native to their lands. If you consider yourself to be Haitian, then Haitians dealt a lot with, I believe it's sugarcane, who are the tribe of Levi. We cultivated all of these crops, and these other nations didn't even let us eat off of the good of our own land. Speaking again, just specifically to the tribe of Levi over in Haiti, we have a celebration called, well, it's really just what we would call Haitian Independence Day, which falls on January 1st. Our people are not supposed to observe New Year's because that's not a thing. The New Year is different every year because it goes based off of the moon. But just coincidentally, so-called Haitian Independence Day falls on that same day. And the dish that's eaten on that day is what's known as soup jumu. And the tribe of Levi eats that because it signified the first time they were able to take those legumes and those crops and put them and eat them. They were harvesting, cultivating these crops, and they were never able to enjoy them. So they put them together in a soup, and the rest is history. If you are of the tribe of Levi, it's definitely not against the commandment of the Lord to observe the time where we triumphed over Esau Edom, over our oppressor. Don't hold it in the same esteem or regard as the high holy days, but it's definitely permissible to keep a day like that. And I know that most of the other Caribbean countries have their own independence days, like Jamaica and especially Trinidad. So I'm going to start in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28. That is let me not say but that is an incredible chapter to read from verses 15 through 68 that tells us about our plight. So I'm going to get Deuteronomy chapter 28 and I'm going to start at verse number 37. It says, "And thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations whither the Lord shall lead thee. Thou shalt carry much seed out into the field, and shalt gather but little in, for the locust shall consume it. Thou shalt plant vineyards and dress them, but shalt neither drink of the wine nor gather of the grapes, for the worms shall eat them. Thou shalt have olive trees throughout all thy coasts, but thou shalt not anoint thyself with the oil, for thine olive oil shall cast his fruit." So this is just talking about the good of our land being taken from us. We wouldn't be able to enjoy our vineyards, our olive trees, things like that. And how many instances do we hear of our colonizers coming into the lands where we were sojourning in? Because outside of the land of Israel, which is from the Nile to the Euphrates, which the Lord promised unto Abraham, that is our holy land. The tents of Shem stretched out into Europe, and Northern Kingdom came here into the known world, the fourth part of the world during the Assyrian captivity. So they can stake their claim to North and Central and South America, really, in great mass. But all this to say, everywhere that we settled, from the west coast of Africa to, again, North Central South America to the Caribbean. I mean, who came in there and had their own conferences and their own meetings where they would divvy up our land and rule over us with rigor? None other than the Edomites, who are the so-called Caucasians today. And the Moabites as well. The Moabites are not absolved from their own share of culpability in our plight. Moab, to this day, as Deontay Wilder would say, to this day, Moab is still oppressing the children of Israel over in Africa with their industrious and their trade practices. That's something that you can delve into. It is very interesting to learn about how China is increasing their presence in the continent of Africa. And yes, not all Africans are Israelites. A great portion of the land of Africa is inhabited by Hamites, who have nothing to do with our people. Yes, they have brown skin, dark brown skin. They have full lips. They have woolly hair. But They are not our people at all. And the Lord has great indignation for those Canaanites and those Hamites. But yes, that's what Deuteronomy 28 is talking about. The lush of our land. I've used the country of Haiti twice. I'll use it again just because I know that it was considered to be one of, if not the most fruitful lands. I believe it's like not the wonder of the world, but like the number one tourist attraction, something like that. Haiti was an extremely fruitful land. And after the French came in there, then, we see what happened. We see what happened now. Haiti is one of, if not the poorest countries on the planet. So that just goes to show the way in which Esau, Edom, and these other nations, the Ishmaelites as well, who have had a major hand in our downfall, have all fed off of our land. Reading on, it says in Deuteronomy chapter 28, and I'm going to get 51. It says, matter of fact, I'm going to get 50. It says, a nation of fierce countenance which shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young. That's who the Most High brought against our people for their transgressions. Verse 51, it says, and he shall eat the fruit of thy cattle and the fruit of thy land until thou be destroyed, which also shall not leave thee either corn, wine, or oil, or the increase of thy kine, or flocks of thy sheep, until he have destroyed thee. So that's what the Lord said was going to happen to our people. They came in there into the land of Israel, starting with the Assyrians, and then stretching all the way from them to the Babylonians and the Medo-Persians. Yes, the Medo-Persians allowed us to go back into the Holy Land and build our walls and build our temple. But that doesn't mean that we were completely free. We were still captives under them. And then after them, the Greeks wrought all manner of abominations. And then the Romans came and were in power during the time of our Lord and Yahushua HaMashiach. And the Roman Empire has had a stronghold or a footing over the world influence for millenniums. And from them has sprung out many of the European superpowers today. So, of course, there were other world superpowers in between. Again, the Ishmaelites had a great time from the caliphates that rose up, such as the Umayyad, the Abbasid, and the Rashidun caliphates, which you can also delve into in your own time, which you also may have been instructed on in school. I know I learned about that in high school. So I'm going to get the book of Joel chapter 1 now to just get some context as to how the other nations have eaten of our land. This is Joel chapter 1 and verse number 3. It says, tell your children of it, and let your children tell their children, and their children another generation. That which the palmer worm hath left hath the locust eaten, and that which the locust hath left hath the cankerworm eaten, and that which the cankerworm hath left hath the caterpillar eaten. Awake, ye drunkards, and weep and howl, all ye drinkers of wine, because of the new wine, for it is cut off from your mouth. For a nation is come up upon my land strong and without number, whose teeth are the teeth of a lion, and he hath the cheek teeth of a great lion. He hath laid my vine waste and barked my fig tree. He hath made it clean bare and cast it away. The breaches thereof are made white. So this also harkens unto Deuteronomy 28. This is like the consequence of Deuteronomy 28. Let me see if I can get the exact precept that goes into the locust and the cankerworm. Bear with me while I try to locate that precept, because they go hand in hand. Bear with me one moment. This is Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse number 33. It says, "The fruit of thy land and all thy labors shall a nation which thou knowest not eat up, and thou shalt be only oppressed and crushed alway, so that thou shalt be mad for the sight of thine eyes which thou shalt see." Back to Joel chapter 1. Keep that in mind, what we just read in Deuteronomy 28. This is Joel chapter 1. Again, it says, "For a nation is come up upon my land strong and without number, whose teeth are the teeth of a lion, and he hath the cheek teeth of a great lion. He hath laid my vine waste and barked my fig tree. He hath made it clean bare and cast it away. The branches thereof are made white." That's what the Lord was telling us. That nation which we know is not will eat up the fruit of our land and all our labors. If I'm not mistaken, the prophet Joel lived during the Babylonian captivity. So that precept in Deuteronomy 28 is not just speaking about Babylon or Assyria or Greece, but it's talking about all of our captivities, all the nations that have come upon us and eaten of the fruit of our land. That's what that's talking about. Because the curses of Deuteronomy took shape once the Most High started executing judgment upon the northern kingdom for their great wickedness. Because northern kingdom was wicked as ever. And so the Lord dealt with them very harshly after exercising great patience, because that's who the Lord is. He's very patient. And then if you abuse that patience, then he takes off that belt. So that's Joel chapter 1. Now, going into 2 Kings. The book of 2 Kings is a phenomenal book to read, to really learn about the history of your people from the time that they were getting ready to be expelled out of the Holy Land and where they went. Because you may say, okay, we are the Israelites. Well, that's like 3,000-4,000 years. How did our people get here, there, everywhere? How do we have people in all these different countries? Like Norway, like Sweden, like just Scandinavia in general. How are people in Scandinavia? How are our people in Greece? How are our people in Cambodia and Malaysia? How are our people in Australia and New Zealand? Well, the scriptures give us a great account of how the dispersion first took place, and consequently, who was put in our land as a result. So this is the book of 2 Kings chapter 17. And I'm going to get verse number 22. It says, "For the children of Israel walked in all the sins of Jeroboam, which he did. They departed not from them." So Jeroboam was the first king of the northern kingdom. He was a servant unto Solomon. He was like one of King Solomon's subjects. And the Lord had given him 10 tribes. He gave Solomon's son Rehoboam 2 tribes. That's what created the fission or the fissure. I believe the word is fissure between the northern and the southern kingdoms. And Jeroboam made 2 molten calves for the northern kingdom to worship. And that really got that snowball rolling downhill on the northern kingdom worshiping the bull god like Baal and Molech and Chemosh. So they did that for years upon years upon years, and the Lord said, enough. Reading on. It says in verse 23 now, 2 Kings chapter 17 and verse 23, "Until the Lord removed Israel out of his sight, as he had said by all his servants the prophets." So who is that? That's Moses, who we read in Deuteronomy 28. That's one example. "So was Israel carried away out of their land to Assyria unto this day. And the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon and from Cutha and from Ava and from Hamath and from Sepharvaim and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel. And they possessed Samaria and dwelt in the cities thereof. And so it was at the beginning of their dwelling there that they feared not the Lord. Therefore the Lord sent lions among them, which slew some of them. So it tells us right there, the king of Assyria brought people from different lands, like the Babylonians. The Babylonians are an amalgamation of people. Nimrod was who erected, which you can read about in Genesis chapter 10. He erected Erech and Calneh, I believe it is, and Babel. That was the beginning of his kingdom. And Nimrod was the son of Cush, who was the son of Ham. So Nimrod was a Hamite. But the Babylonians also have a lot of Semites who were intermingled with them. So the Babylonians were Hamitic people, and they were also a Shemitic people. Just depends on who their father was. So here in 2 Kings chapter 17, we see how the king of Assyria and the Assyrians descend from Asher, who was a Shemite or a Semite. That's where we get the term anti-Semitic from Shem, one of the sons of Noah, Shem. The king of Assyria put Shemites in the land. Let me get that again. From Babylon, right? So he put Shemites and Hamites, and all the other lands which I read out. So this is to let us know that our people were the ones who were originally in the Holy Land, and afterward, these other nations started displacing our people and putting their own inhabitants and their own subjects in other lands. It could be likened unto in some respects, perhaps it could be likened unto like a feudal system, because that's the way things operated back in olden times. Countries would take over other countries. They would make the poor of those countries do their manual labor, build their megalithic structures, till the land. So it would be somewhat like a feudal system. So that's what it's talking about here in 2 Kings chapter 17. I wanted to get that because that gives us some good context into how, for example, this touches on Samaria. When we read the Gospels, if you read, I believe it's in the book of Luke, we read about the parable of the Good Samaritan. The southern kingdom didn't really have dealings with the Samaritans like that during the time of Yahushai. And why is that? Because the Samaria was so infiltrated and intermixed with so many heathen that, and I mean, as we read in 2 Kings 17, it said that they feared not the Lord. So the Lord sent lions among them at that time. These people did not, and do not fear the Lord. This is why we have to be holy from them and separate from them, because they don't give a damn about our laws. They don't keep the Sabbath day. If you hang around these people, they will draw you away from the Sabbath day. They will get you to partake in all of their divinations and all of their, even in this time, they may even be still doing that, sacrificing their own children unto Baal and to Molech. That's what's led to Solomon's downfall, because he had 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines, and they turned away his heart. And you can just imagine what a bunch of beautiful women, with the king, you can just imagine how that can wear on his mind over time. So now let me see if there's one more precept that I want to get before closing out, because when we are asked, well, even beyond when we are asked, first we need to know for ourselves. So when we wonder to ourselves, okay, how can we prove that we're the Israelites? And what is it that anything that I've read proves that our people, the so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, are the people of the book. Well, we look at the curses that have fallen upon our people, and we're able to identify ourselves with them. If you take one curse in and of itself, just one, it could theoretically apply to any people. For example, a nation shall come upon you which you have not known, and shall not regard the person of the old, or show favor unto the young. That's roughly paraphrasing one of the precepts in Deuteronomy 28. You could say, okay, well, most countries in the world have been conquered at one point or another, and they didn't know who it was that was conquering them. They looked different from them. How do we know that that's Israel? Well, first you go to Deuteronomy 28 and 68 and you shut them up. You go to Deuteronomy 28 and 68 and you shut them up, and you point out how our people were taken into slavery on ships. And then after you do so, then you break down the precepts, because, it just speaks for itself. Once you go 15 through 68, there's no way that any other people can conceivably say that all of those plagues happened unto them in totality. Only our people can say that. But when you do the history and you look at artwork, archaeology, when you read historical accounts, when you take other precepts which give us context clues into the skin color of our people, and how, for example, our people could have been mistaken for Egyptians, like Moses and like the Apostle Paul, for example, and Phineas, who, when you look at Phineas's name, there's some good nuggets that you can find if you go into the Blue Letter. Beautiful nuggets you can find on Phineas's name. When we look at these things, we say, okay, our people were made from the dust of the ground. We see that Esau in Genesis chapter 25 came out red all over like a hairy garment. And it was astonishing to look upon him. Why is that? Because he looked different from everybody else who was on the earth, by and large. Not even say by and large. He looked different from everybody else, coming out red all over. We look at the book of Exodus and we see how Moses put his hand in his bosom and it became leprous, white as snow. And then when he put it back in his bosom, it became like his other flesh. And we say, okay, so we see Adam, we see Moses, we see Phineas, we see Paul, we see Miriam, who was smitten with leprosy, which was like the Lord spitting in her face. We see all these accounts of our people having dark skin. We read Revelation chapter 1 and verse 14. We see the angels had dark skin. We say, okay, so the Israelites were dark-skinned people. So we can eliminate the Edomites, who are the Caucasians. We can eliminate the Moabites, who are the so-called Chinese, the Ammonites, who are the so-called Japanese. So who are we left with? Now, people will like to get slick and they'll say, okay, they were dark skinned. It's not talking about brown skin, like what they would say so-called Negroes. They'll say they looked like Ishmaelites, for example, bronze skin, whatever they want to say about that. Well, then you go in your bag and you pull out Daniel chapter 7 and verse number 9. And then you show them how the texture of our people's hair was woolly. So then people will try to get double slick with you and they'll say, okay, well, people with so-called Jew froze have that woolly hair. And it's like, slow down, slow down. All right. They try to pull fast ones on you. So proving our identity is really a multi-step process, because you really just have to be sound with the scriptures. But I wanted to get these precepts out just to show you how the Lord told us that our people would suffer these plagues and the good of our land would be eaten up and we wouldn't be able to enjoy it. Just look at what the Berlin Conference did. Look at the Caribbean nations today. There's a reason why a lot of these Caribbean nations and these tropical islands rely on the United States and other countries. I'm not going to name them specifically because I don't know which ones pertain to which country, but there's a reason why these countries rely on the United States and some of these European superpowers to supplement them with aid whenever there are natural disasters and things of the sort. Because they came, they saw, and they conquered. And that just goes in. That's another thing. You say, all right, well, how is it that our people are the people of God and we were supposed to be the strongest people? No one would have been able to stand up against us. One of us, 5 of us shall chase 100, and 100 of us shall put 10,000 to flight. Well, how is it that we were subdued and kept down for so long? Well, then we go into the prophecies, like in Genesis chapter, I believe it's either 29 or 31. We see how Esau was given the power of the sword. That was his blessing, that he would live by the sword. And what better sword exemplifies a way in which a people have lived, and in a way in which the world has been influenced to heighten warfare, than the gun? The gun is one of the most influential inventions in human history. And yes, the Moabites have a great hand in that. I believe the Moabites, the Chinese, created gunpowder. But when we're talking about just the way in which the gun has been magnified throughout the world, that's Esau. That's Esau. So there's a lot there, but we need to understand that we are that true prince who was promised, not according to, but similar to the way in which Jon Snow was that prince who was promised in Game of Thrones. He was supposed to be the king. He was the rightful heir. He never knew it was kept from him. Same thing today. You go into school, they give you the demographic slip that you're supposed to fill out. It says, what's your race? You check black, you check Hispanic, you check Native American, and you just move on from there. Not understanding that what is black, because I can put 5 different people who would all claim to be black, and each one of them could be something else. Let me see if I can even think of like certain celebrities just for people who everybody knows. Like you could put Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, for example, LeBron James. Well, let me not even use LeBron. You could put Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and then you could put like, man, I'm kind of blanking. I'm trying to differentiate who from who. All that to say, I'm not even going to use celebrities. Point is, you can put someone who claims to be biracial, someone who has a father of the other nations and a mother who's considered themselves to be black, and so on and so forth. And all these people are just different people according to the lineage of their fathers. So when people try to ask you, okay, well, how do you know you're the Israelites? You say, after you give them Deuteronomy 28, and then you break down the skin color and the hair, and you go into some of the other plagues, some of the other curses, if that's what your prerogative, then you pull the precepts out that I got. Joel chapter 1, Deuteronomy 28, and I believe it was 33. And then you also go into some of these other precepts that talk about the way in which our land has been raped. And then you say, all right, well, who else suffered this throughout history? Throughout. Not being able to enjoy the fruit of their own land. And then you back that up with as much empirical data and research as you possibly can, because it is our job to seek out knowledge, wisdom, and understanding at all costs. So it's extremely important that you understand your heritage and your identity, because it is exclusive. It is only for you. It is not for these other nations. And when you understand who you are, then you understand who your power is. And when you understand who your power is, which is the most important thing for any person who's an Israelite who's breathing and not breathing, then you know what your job is on this earth, and how you can get better every day in righteousness and in faith. With that, I say, Shalom, Israel. You are that true prince who was promised. Shalom.